Attic Mall Studios. This is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 11:06. Guess what you're thinking about? You're thinking about lunch, right?
That's right.
And how smart are you when it comes to picking the foods that you're going to have for lunch?
Exactly.
Oh, man. I'm really smart. After I'm done eating, I'm always aware that, my next meal, you're not going to have something healthy. But if it's like 3 minutes before it's time to eat, forget it. I'm just going to make all the bad mistakes so that, the Oreos are going to come out and, just...
There you go. I'm with you.
That might be part of our problem. Maybe we all do that, and maybe that's why we have some of the diseases that we have, right? Mm-hmm. If you saw this title on a book, I bet you'd pick it up. It's called Eat to Beat Disease, the new science of how your body can heal itself. And we have the author of that book on the phone. He is Dr. William W. Lee. He's a world-renowned physician whose groundbreaking work has impacted more than 70 diseases, including cancer, diabetes, blindness, heart disease, obesity. He is a scientist. He leads the Angiogenesis Foundation. He's a contributor to Dr. Oz, NPR, CNN, MSNBC, AM Ocala Live. Yeah, I threw ours in there too, Robin. I just want to hear our name with Voice of America, etc. And he was presented to the Vatican's Unite. I can't even read. The Vatican's Unite to Cure Conference. The book, again, you're going to pick it up just by seeing the title, Eat to Beat Disease. Dr. Lee, it's an honor to have you on our show. Good morning, sir.
Well, good morning, Larry and Robin. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show. It's a pleasure to be on.
So I believe right off the bat, and I think a lot of people do, that we can eat to beat disease. But there's a psychological element here. Like at 3 minutes before I eat, and I see potato chips on the table. I know what I shouldn't do, but I do it anyway. Is there any? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, well, so listen, I'm a medical doctor, an internal medicine doctor, and I'm a research scientist as well. And I spent most of my career being trained to write prescriptions and help patients overcome their diseases by treating the disease after the horse has come out of the barn. And it occurred to me maybe a decade ago that we can do much better than this by really intercepting diseases and preventing them. And this is really how I began looking at not only medicines, some of which I helped to develop, but also foods as a way of improving the toolkit that we have for our health. So here's the thing about food and health. There is so much confusion out there in the public because we hear about the latest superfood or super diet, and then the next week we hear everything's reversed. And that kind of seesaw confuses everyone, including myself and the medical community. So I felt it was time to really put things in order and look at how the science has advanced so that we can understand what it really means to look at food and health.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just want to put you on hold just for a second, just so I can say this, because you just said exactly what I was hoping we would hear from somebody eventually, and you said it. Robin and I interview authors all the time, and I'm just as confused, and I'm sure that our listeners are confused. It is not unheard of for us to have a guest who has written a book that says you should never eat meat. And then in the next half hour, have another expert guest who says you should eat mostly meat. It's not unheard of for us to have guests who are presented to us as experts who disagree with one another, and we're just radio hosts, and we end up thinking, well, gosh, what do we do? And I'm sure that our listeners are just as confused. So the fact that you just said what you said gets our attention even more so than the title of your book.
Well, thank you for setting that up, because really I'm sharing what I've learned, and that is that when it comes to food and health, it's not just about the food. What we've discovered, it's about how your body responds to what we put inside it. And so this is an entirely different way to look at food and health. Rather than trying to take a look at a single ingredient or a single food and blow it up and then take it down, what I'm saying in my book, Eat to Beat Disease, is that the secrets are within the body itself. So the first thing we actually did is we actually discovered through my organization that health is not just the absence of disease. Quite the opposite. It's the result of natural health defense systems that are hardwired into us. We actually discovered 5 of them, and I write about this in the book. Angiogenesis, which is our circulation, brings oxygen and nutrients to every cell in our body. Our regeneration system, when we were kids, we learned that starfish and salamanders can regenerate, but people can't. Science tells us that's not true. We do regenerate from the inside out using our own stem cells, and foods can activate that system. Our microbiome, which your listeners are probably hearing about from everywhere, which is our healthy bacteria. When we feed ourselves, we're also feeding our bacteria, and so foods can have an impact there. DNA, it's not just the genetics of our life. It actually protects us from the environment, what we breathe and what we actually encounter out there. The DNA can fix itself. And then finally, our grandmas always told us about immunity, and we know that our immune system protects us against infection, but we now have an even deeper understanding that the immune system actually protects us against cancer as well. So with that in mind, with this perspective in mind, we can have a brand new look, and this is what I write about, at what is the evidence that foods activate one or more of these defense systems, and this gives us an entirely new window into why we should choose certain foods. And I focus on foods to add for health, not just what you should actually cut out and eliminate.
All right, if I were to list the foods that I eat in the course of a week, I bet you there's not that many. Do you know? I bet you chicken is on the list, and what else do I have, Robin? And on the healthy side, maybe peas and carrots.
Yeah, sometimes fish.
Yeah. So I'm thinking my list is very small. Do I need to expand the list? Do I need to add more things to my list?
Right. Well, I've identified more than 200 foods across different categories in my book. I mean, there's charts and tables all over the place. And what the great news is that when you flip through my book, you can find something that you recognize. And although you may have a relatively limited, let's say, repertoire that you eat at home, and most people, kind of like to eat the things they like to eat or that they're used to eating. Mm-hmm. If you go out to a restaurant, or if you are at a grocery store or a farmer's market, you're bound to see foods that are on my list. And the question is, do you understand why they're good for you? Would you want to try them? And by the way, if you prepare the foods the right way, they're absolutely delicious. And so we can lean into our diets now as opposed to run away from foods.
I'm sorry, Robert, go ahead.
And what you're doing with the foods is that sometimes people think that they can't eat healthy because they have to buy the expensive items, but your way is very cost effective.
Yeah, my approach is really about diversity. And so my book, Eat to Beat Disease, contains information for everyone to make healthier food choices, regardless of your socioeconomic situation or even your cultural background, whether it's Mexican or Italian or Asian or wherever you come from. There is something there that's actually good for you, even sauerkraut, for example.
I love that.
By the way, the University of Florida is part of our listening audience, and I know you mentioned them as at least one thing I read regarding aged garlic. Where are you calling from? Where are you from?
I'm in New England, in the Boston area.
Okay. And we've heard that garlic is good for us, but I never heard aged garlic. Can you explain that a little bit?
Right. Well, so Mother Nature's laced many foods with natural chemicals that actually help protect the plant. They have a function in the plant. But when, humans actually started to eat plants, those same chemicals had a different job description, and they activate our cells, including our defense system. So garlic belongs to a cluster of plants that are called allium, and that includes onions and scallions and ramps and other great things that come out in the spring and over the course of the summer. Garlic actually is one of those foods that actually keeps for a long time. And when you pull it straight out of the ground, it's this kind of like this tannish, juicy kind of food that you can cut up and make delicious things with. But over time, it will actually age. And what's been discovered by researchers is that as it ages, it doesn't actually lose its healthful properties. In fact, it gains some of those healthful properties. So aged garlic can actually help to influence our immune system.
You also tell us about fish and shellfish.
Right. So what's interesting is that everybody talks about healthy foods as dark leafy greens, and, kale is talked about over and over until people are blue in the face. And yes, kale is very healthy, and we should be eating whole plant-based foods. That's clear. The evidence is completely clear that is a healthy pattern. But in my book, what I say is, let's look at the science. And it turns out that seafood, which include fish and shellfish, also have healthful properties, but for different reasons. Fish from the sea that are oily, the anchovies, the mackerel, the sardines, but even some of the larger fish like salmon can contain healthy marine omega-3 fatty acids. So we know that, and you have to be a little bit careful you don't choose the big fish that may contain mercury. But so fish actually can, the bigger the fish, the more likely they have eaten something that might have mercury in them. So eating lower in the food chain gets you the same healthy fats, but less chance of actually having, the mercury from the environment. Now, shellfish, which include clams and even oysters, also have not only healthy fatty acids, but it's been discovered that oysters, for example, contain special proteins that can actually enhance the immune system. And these proteins even are available and help our bodies even when they're cooked.
So do we change our diet? So, okay, how do I have a different... let me ask this a different way. Do we identify the disease and then eat to cure it, or do we just create a healthy overall diet and expect it to take care of everything that ails us?
Right. Listen, everybody's different. Some of your listeners are well, some of them may be struggling with conditions, and some of them may actually be at risk for certain conditions. And in my book, I actually have it in one of the appendix, kind of a self-guide, a checklist of things that you can actually do to assess your own risk, in the same way that a doctor actually thinks when they're seeing a patient for the first time. So what I would say is that regardless of who you are and what your risk factors are and what you're struggling with, everyone has an opportunity. It's never too late to choose a diverse, healthy meal. And if you take a look at all the lists out there and don't think about trying to find just that one magic food, because there is no magic bullet food. But understand that the world of the farmer's market, the grocery store, is filled with foods that can actually activate our defenses, and then choose wisely. And that's what I think is really something that everybody should do, is start by supporting our health defense systems. You
have introduced us to a variety of cheeses in your book. I'm kind of like a Swiss cheese person, but you have, introduced me to a different variety of cheeses, which I much appreciate.
Well, listen, a lot in my book, there are lots of foods that open eyes and drop jaws because they're surprises and not always associated with healthy food. And I just present the science and an explanation of why. Look, cheese is a dairy product, and some people have difficulty with dairy. Cheese also can contain saturated fats, and that's not a good type of fat to have. And many cheeses can contain salt. However, what I point out is that many cheeses are made with healthy bacteria that we can use to feed our microbiome. And so that's one good reason to love cheese. But the other one that I write about in Eat to Beat Disease is that there are some hard cheeses like Gouda cheese or Jarlsberg cheese, Emmentaler cheese, Edam cheese. These are hard cheeses that you can find in a grocery store that have been studied and found that they actually contain a special vitamin called vitamin K2 from the bacteria used to make hard cheeses. This vitamin actually has a really unique property. It cuts off the blood supply feeding cancers. And studies have shown that people who eat as little as 2 slices of cheese a day, it's like you go to a hotel in Europe, they're always serving cheese for breakfast, actually they have a lower risk of some cancers like lung cancer. So not eating a lot, eating a little, and it's been studied in populations.
And you've done all of your research on this. My gosh, you've done the research to try to help fight cancer, diabetes, and blindness, and you're not just talking about this, but you've actually lived this in all of your research.
And part of the reason I'm so passionate about communicating this is because I have seen firsthand as a doctor the ravages of disease and how it makes people struggle with their health. And the bottom line is that it's never too late to do something good for yourself, because your body wants to heal itself. And that's what I bring forward in the first part of this book. We have these amazing defense systems that our body allows us to resist diseases. So when we get sick, it's usually because one or more of our defenses are down. And when the defenses are down, it's like having a pothole in the road. It's going to be a bumpier road. So let's go ahead and fix it.
I just realized how I know you. I watched you on a TED Talk, not in person, but on YouTube. And you have one, I just looked it up. It's called Can We Eat to Starve Cancer? Correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's correct.
So for our listeners, you got to get the book, but you got to watch this video. The video's free. Mm-hmm. What Dr. Lee says in this video remember I told you about this, Robin?
Yeah, you did.
What to eat to starve cancer, not starve yourself to starve cancer.
Right.
Oh my gosh!
Amazing.
Oh my gosh!
I'm
so even more honored that you're on the show now. Yeah, I mean, the speech you gave at the TED Talk is only part of this book, correct? This goes even
That's
deeper
correct.
than the speech.
Yeah, I gave the TED Talk in 2010, and actually I was invited. I was very flattered and invited to write a book right after that TED Talk, and I felt I wasn't ready to do it, and there was so much more science that's developed over the last 8 or 9 years, and so this book really represents my understanding that the science has finally advanced, so we have a much, much broader view. So I talk about the same things in a TED Talk on an up-to-date way, and then I actually bring it all the way into these other areas that are incredibly exciting for people who used to dread dieting for health means that you have to cut things out of your life. And what I'm saying is now we can actually deliberately choose things that activate our health defenses.
All right, so can we do something fun? All right. I have a fun way to ask a question. Okay. So in our imaginations, okay, we have an empty table and we're going to set it for lunch. And the food that's going to be on that table is going to be picked by you. The beautiful part about this is you have a kitchen and a refrigerator and cupboards that have everything in them.
Okay.
Everything possible. You got Oreos and you got garlic. And
Pressure's on.
You got everything in there. What are you going to say? What are we having for lunch? What are you bringing out?
Well, I can tell you how I approach meals myself. I first try to think about what I feel like eating, and I try to think about building something around something that has a plant that's plant-based. So, for example, it doesn't have to be a salad, but it could be olives. It doesn't have to be, like a big piece of kale. It could be a piece of fruit. So I try to make sure that the thing that I know is going to be good for me is actually front and center of my mind. It could be an orange or a tangerine or a mandarin in the winter. Then I try to think about, what I want to do to complement that. And it might be a piece of fish. It might be a piece of chicken thigh, by the way. In my book, I write, it's not the breast that's good for you, as we are all taught to be and conditioned to think. The thigh, the dark meat, contains a vitamin called vitamin K2, same as a cheese, that can starve cancers as well. And then I'll think about, are there other herbs and spices that I can actually use to light up the flavors? Do I want to put any olive oil into it? And do I want to construct it into a way that fits together? Many cultures that are careful about their food, for example, in the Mediterranean or in Asia, there is a philosophy of how you assemble a meal. You want to have something green. You want to have something crunchy. You want to have something steamed. And what I try to do is to use that, what feels natural to me, that fits my appetite, to be able to do it. I do not add sugar to things. I don't use added sugar. I use any oils I use would be olive oil, and I use it very, very lightly. And for lunch, honestly, I like to eat a light lunch. I think eating lightly keeps me on my feet, keeps me from kind of lagging after lunch that, sometimes people do. And so I try to eat something fresh, healthy. It's got some vegetables, got some protein in it. It could be fish, and something that's, most of us are pretty busy zipping around during the day. So I try to do something that isn't going to be too burdensome. By the way, here's something I also talk about in my book that's found in the cupboard. We have lost sight I think in America, that tinned fish, sardines, mackerels, all kinds of other things that are delicacies in Europe. You go to Spain or Italy, I mean, people love and take great care of the things that they put, the seafood they put in little tins. It's really a specialty. Here, we think about it as cat food. But actually, that's coming back now. There's a resurgence of like tinned seafood, and that's a really convenient way to open up a tin of fish that you might like, or shellfish, and complement that with some greens.
Okay, so does that apply to tuna?
Absolutely. Now, for tuna, you really want to, for me, I have a philosophical aspect on this. Like, I want to make sure that the tuna was caught in a sustainable, responsible way that's not catching dolphins and turtles. But yeah, tuna actually does have a lot of the healthy oils. One thing to be careful about, like tuna is kind of a big fish. The bigger the fish, the more likely that they will have eaten other fish that might contain mercury. So I like to eat a little bit lower on the food chain.
So have you actually seen somebody change their diet and reverse diseases? And it doesn't have to be cancer, but I wondered if that was part of it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And this is part of my own experiences as a doctor is, I used to see patients and give them these, dreaded diagnoses, and they would always ask me, how bad is it? What do I have to do to be treated? And, how long do I have, doc? And then they put their coat on, and they'd be walking out the door, and they would stick their head back and say, hey, one more thing, doc. Is there something I should be doing for myself? What should I eat? I never had that answer, and I realized I wasn't taught in medical school, and I felt that was wrong. And that's what set me on this journey to try to figure out, what is that answer? Yeah. And what is it based by, right? So, as I have been able to peel back the layer of this onion and use science as my, to illuminate the way, what I've tried to do with patients, including patients with cancer, is to try to provide them some advice, which I've actually written about in this book, to really help to buttress and fortify their defense system. So, I mean, there are patients who that I've seen with liver cancers and even pancreatic cancers who have actually are living really well, nicely with their disease. In some cases, having their diseases go away. And I'm not talking about the anecdotes. I'm just talking about they feel better. And their doctors can't always explain it because it's not a drug. And I don't believe that food is a cure-all. You've got to combine everything together. But when you think about somebody who is sick, who's getting a prescription or going to the hospital to be treated, the kind of health care that we need to do for ourselves is what we do at home between doctor's office visits.
Okay, I have a last question. I know we're out of time, but real quickly, and this is based on another interview we've done a long time ago.
Okay.
And so I actually have two in one, okay? So, but they should be easy. The question, the first part of this two-part question is, can the food we eat change the alkalinity/acidity of our blood, of our bodies? And the second part is, does alkalinity kill cancer?
Okay. So this is a very common belief. It's a bit of an urban legend. The human body is engineered. Our blood is engineered to be able to keep the exact level of acidity and alkalinity. We call it pH. That is very difficult to change. When people talk about sort of alkalinity, you're talking about, and it's a concept really, and it's all based on research that kind of gets interpreted by non-scientists in ways that winds up changing people's minds. No matter what we do to our blood, it is impossible to make it very acidic. You'll die. And it's it's also impossible to make it very alkaline, although we can eat foods that are more alkaline or acid. Once you put it into the body, it's kind of like like a swimming pool. You adjust the pH in it so it's always exactly the same. So bacteria don't grow in it. That's exactly how our blood is. It is very, very difficult to change our pH. So cancers, if you take a look inside a cancer within a tumor, it might be a little bit more alkaline or more tumor, but eating food is not going to actually affect that. Rather, the natural chemicals in the foods we eat actually can get into the bloodstream, get into the tumor, and affect its ability to grow.
I would recommend anybody who's interested in this, you gotta go to YouTube, look up Dr. William Li, Li, Dr. William L.I. Lee. He has done some amazing speaking on YouTube. The one that I found first was a TED Talks one, which was talking about how to starve cancer. And I have the book here. It's called Eat to Beat Disease. One of you will get it if you call me and ask for it. It'll be yours. Just I'll pick somebody at random. 622-9622. The rest of us have to buy it. I did find it on Amazon. It looks like it's number 1 right now, by the way.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew
Well,
that.
thank you. Yeah, it hit number 1 actually within a few hours of its release, and it's been really rewarding to see the reception. It just goes to show you,
Oh my gosh.
people are hungry to eat.
Oh wait, I give away books all the time. You're not going to believe the whole screen is lit up. All right, pick one at random,
Ooh,
Robin.
look at those.
I'll just pick this one
There you
right here.
Wow.
Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this?
Stephanie Warnock,
Stephanie. Do you know where we are?
at the mall.
At the mall. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The book will be waiting for you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, if you didn't win it, you got to buy this one. This is a good one. Dr. William Lee, it's an honor, again, to have you on our show. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been great chatting with you, Larry and Robin. And my book, Eat to Beat Disease, is available anywhere books are sold. And you can sign up to be a part of my community and stay informed about the research on drwilliamleeli.com.
Oh, thank you for telling us that. drwilliamlee.com. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll be right back.